Starmer's vetting failure crisis, system breakdown or political shield. The Mandelson affair. How a security breach became a political test of leadership. The headline fact is simple and politically explosive. Politics? A senior figure was appointed to one of the most sensitive diplomatic roles in government, despite failing the highest level of security clearance. The decision was overridden. The Prime Minister says he was not told. Now, an urgent review has been ordered for the entire vetting system. But this is not just a story about process. It is a story about judgment, power, and where accountability ultimately lands when systems break. What actually happened? At the center of the crisis is the appointment of Peter Mandelson as ambassador to Washington. Security vetting officials recommended that he should not receive developed vetting clearance. Officials within the government overruled that recommendation. The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, says he was not informed of the failure at the time. The result? A candidate who had failed clearance was still granted access to sensitive information. Starmer has since admitted the appointment was a mistake and taken responsibility for the decision itself, while maintaining he did not know the full security picture when making it. The revelation triggered the following: a senior civil service resignation, suspension of the power to override vetting decisions, a broader review into how national security vetting works, the system failure, and why it matters. On its face, this is a serious institutional breakdown. The UK's vetting system is designed to ensure that individuals entrusted with sensitive information meet strict security standards. When that system flags a risk, the expectation is clear: that advice holds weight. In this case, it didn't. Instead, a denial recommendation was bypassed. Critical information did not reach political leadership. Oversight mechanisms failed to escalate a major risk. That combination is not a minor administrative error. It is a structural failure. And that alone is enough to justify a full review. The leadership question no one can avoid. But the political tension stems from a harder question. Even if the system failed, should the Prime Minister have seen the risk anyway? Critics argue that warnings existed around reputational and security concerns. The appointment itself carried obvious political risk. Due diligence should have gone beyond formal clearance. Some accounts suggest concerns were raised in advance, framing this less as a hidden technical failure and more as a decision taken despite visible risks. That shifts the debate from process to judgment, because in high-level appointments, the expectation is not just procedural compliance. It is political instinct. Why the review changes the story. The decision to order a sweeping review is being framed as necessary reform. And on one level, it is a system that allows failed vetting outcomes to be overridden, critical information to be withheld, accountability to blur the lines between departments, is a system that needs fixing. But the review also does something else. It reframes the narrative. Instead of a singular question, why was this appointment made? The focus expands to the following: how does the whole vetting system work? Where are the structural weaknesses? That shift matters, because it moves the conversation away from a single decision and into a broader institutional critique. What this crisis is really about. This issue is not just a security story. It is a classic power question. Where does responsibility end when systems fail? Can leaders rely on process, or must they override it? And when something goes wrong, who owns it? The Mandelson episode sits at the intersection of all three. On one side, a system that failed to function as intended. On the other hand, a leadership decision that, even without full information, now looks politically exposed. What happens next? Three paths now matter. Most likely, the review identifies procedural gaps, communication failures, override powers, and escalation weaknesses, and recommends tighter controls. Most dangerous. Evidence emerges that concerns were more visible than acknowledged, shifting the crisis decisively toward leadership accountability. Most underestimated. The long-term impact on trust between ministers and civil servants. Because once blame begins to move between those two groups, it rarely stops cleanly. The hard reality, the uncomfortable truth is that both things can be true at once. The system can fail, and leadership can still be judged. This crisis exists precisely because the line between those two has blurred. And once that happens, no review, no matter how urgent, can fully contain the political consequences.